Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your hosts, broadcasting live from cyberspace.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we got you covered. Time to wrap up this season with a good dose of 90s nostalgia as we return to the grid and review the newest anime adaptation of a classic tokusatsu franchise, SSSS.Gridman. After that, as with every season finale here on Anime Brain Freeze, we will of course tell you our picks for best anime of the season. But before all that, let's talk a bit about the shows that didn't make the cut, couldn't keep our interest, and got dropped by the wayside right now in the Chop and Drop.
I get the picture. They try to hit you. They try to kick you when you're down and out.
So yeah, time to take a quick look at the shows that didn't make the cut. I think there are not too many surprises in here, you know, considering what we said about the shows we considered during our sneak peek. John, but why don't you give us your shows that you didn't stick with?
The first was Irozuku, The World in Colors.
Yeah, same for me.
I mean, it was visually amazing, but
PA works for you.
Oh yeah, definitely. They are one of the few studios that I think we can both agree on that they do the heavy lifting.
Yeah, at least in terms of visuals.
Yeah.
Writing-wise.
Yeah, some of their shows are a little flat in the writing department. This was one of them, and I got 4 episodes in, and I was like, I think I can see exactly where this is going, and I just sort of pushed it aside.
Yeah, same for me. I only made it 2, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, sad girl is gonna fall in love with that guy who draws the pretty pictures and brings joy and color back into her life, and then, yeah, that's gonna be the story. And,
I mean, maybe there was some other twist in there, but I didn't care to stick around for it.
Yeah, me neither. It's like, okay, this feels like it's gonna be sappy romance stuff, which is not my cup of tea. Not trying to sound macho or anything, but that's how it is. And yeah, the pretty visuals alone couldn't keep me hooked. So there you go. What's the next one?
The next one I think is another one that you dropped as well, and that was Radiant.
Yes. The most generic shonen action.
I watched the first episode and I was like, okay, I've seen this show. See ya. I feel bad saying that because, you know, it's this French comic that apparently people is very well liked. And I was just sort of like, no thanks. It's
just like you said, you've already seen this show and you've seen it much better already. It's like, yeah, this ticks all the boxes, but we have had better tick boxes in that particular genre, and nothing in here looks fresh. It takes a little pick of or a piece of everything and puts it into the blender. Like there's a bit of One Piece in there, there's a bit of Naruto in there, a bit of Dragon Ball in there. You know, everything that you know and maybe love, but doesn't do anything particularly interesting with it. And after 2 episodes, I was like, no, this is just too fucking blah.
It's like I see your inspirations. I respect that, but I'm fine with not watching.
Yeah, if I need a shitty run-of-the-mill shonen action show in my life again, there's still Black Clover lurking in the shadows, trying to prey on my bad taste and weak mind. So
I keep seeing clips and screen caps, so I'm like, man, this looks like it would be fun to just watch as a goof, and then I'm like, nah, no.
It's probably gonna happen eventually. I mean, I've seen some GIFs that at least let me think that some of the fights might be fun and well animated and everything. So I don't know, maybe someday, but not right now, and definitely not this one.
Yeah.
All right. What else?
The last one I'm bringing to the table is Senran Kagura Shinobi Master.
Oh no.
Okay.
The boobs weren't enough.
Okay, listen. Senran Kagura, the games are, except for maybe Peach Beach Splash, because that's kind of a weird offshoot mess of a game. But the mainline ones are the actual, hack and slash beat 'em ups are fun. And then, the plot isn't necessarily super deep, but you at least get these fun little character pieces between all the cast. So, oh, that's neat. That's, I like that a lot. Along comes Shinobi Master, and the director had seen, a boob for the first time in his life and was like, this is it. This is what we need to do. I want to be clear in saying that none of the games have frontal nudity. They're just meant to be like, oh, you can use your imagination to fill in the gaps. And the man who worked on the games, the myth, the legend, Kenichiro Takaki himself, thank you for your service and everything you've done for the world of gaming.
We salute you.
But then we get this show. It leaves nothing to the imagination. It looks bad. Real bad. Like,
it doesn't help when your show is like completely reliant on its characters looking good because that's the only thing that you got to offer, and then they don't.
You ever get that feeling? You're excited for a show. You see the first commercial showing it off, and you're immediately like, oh no.
Yeah.
That was this show. I mean, granted, that's going to be happening again next season.
Why did you would be saying that? There are a lot of shows that happened to me with when, for one reason or another. There was that, the Dragon Prince, from the people who made Avatar and Korra. Or at least one of the head writers, and I looked at and I was super excited when I was, oh shit, yeah, and then I watched the trailer, and it's like the most stuttery, shitty, low FPS CG that you can imagine. I'm like, no!
If you can't make your sneak peek, your first look, the first 30 seconds that everyone's going to see look good, oh man, yeah. Oh no. It's, geez. And what really disappoints me is that the first Senran Kagura show, which sort of stayed a bit more faithful in the story department to the first game that came out, that is the 3DS one, was animated by a studio called Artland. And, the story in Senran Kagura is what it is, but in the animation department, it looked good enough. It looked serviceable. Look, and in the parts where there was, the high speed, like action cuts and all this and that, it looked great. So I was like, yeah, I can get behind that. Then they handed it off to another studio called TNK, and it was all down the shitter from there. Don't watch Shinobi Master.
I don't plan to.
I don't know how I could recommend it to even the most hardcore Senran Kagura fan, because it's... Moving on, what do you have to pick?
Hey, speaking of a bad-looking show, Conception, I mean, we had that...
God.
We both were pretty sure that we would drop it after the first episode, but it still bears mentioning because this is one of the dumbest premises in anime history.
I forgot that because I didn't even put it on my drop list, on my anime watch list.
Well, I looked at everything that we checked out in the sneak peek and, picked out the shows that I didn't continue watching. This is one of them, and there's a good reason for it, because this is the flimsiest garbage game adaptation story plot thing that you can imagine, about a boy who gets transported to a different world. I haven't heard that before. To bang 12 ladies in order to get them pregnant with magical children who will eventually be able to destroy evil demons or something. Yeah, okay.
Why?
I hadn't heard that last one. I gotta admit, because that's ridiculous. And yeah,
his first girlfriend may or may not be his cousin.
Yeah, and yeah. Speaking of shows that look bad, with a show that is supposed to be, has this premise that is kind of banking on the sexy, I guess. This is one of the most unsexy looking anime I've ever seen. It looks so bad in every way. Like, right in the beginning, we were like, that's not how a naked body looks. What are you doing?
Thanks, Gonzo.
Yeah, what the fuck is this? Ah, God, yeah, a failure on all accounts. It wasn't even funny bad.
No.
Like, it was just boring and dumb and cringeworthy and everything. Again, Fremdschämen. And boy, no, we don't need this. I think if I'm not mistaken, they don't even show like the actual, banging parts. It's kind of a fake out. They just have to be like close to each other, and then the child is born from, I don't know, whatever, magic. And they don't actually do the deed. It's like, what a
Can't
tease.
show that on TV.
Yeah. Yeah, my God, that's kind of dumb. So, there you go.
Kinda?
Yeah, pretty dumb. The next thing I did not continue was Goblin Slayer, obviously, which was this dark fantasy, berserk, wannabe D&D campaign put into anime form, which tried way too hard to be shocking instead of pulling me in with interesting characters or anything like that. And yeah, D&D fanboys and girls might get a kick out of it. I did not, because I never played D&D, and I don't care for how realistic this thing was in regards to how one of those campaigns might run, because everything that was in its first 2 episodes was like not interesting to me and was really not maybe bland, but so fucking clumsy and blunt and just, hey, look at this. This is shocking, right? This is dark, right? You have seen Berserk, right? It's like, yeah, I have. I've read it. I've seen it. But that did a much better job at getting you into this horrifying world and then shocking you with things once you've got accustomed to these characters and everything. And not being so lazy about it. And Goblin Slayer felt very lazy and badly written and everything. So, nope. Thanks. Don't care for it. Didn't care for it. Won't care for it. The next one, obviously, I don't even need to mention it, but I will anyway. Ace Attorney Season 2. Because... Jesus Christ, I already said in the sneak peek that I probably wouldn't subject myself to another season of this hideous mess, even though I like the world and characters. But nope, this looked just as bad, like judging from its first episode, than the first season. I think I'd rather watch a long play of the games than another episode of this, so yeah, drop.
So say that's what they made the games for.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a big fan of visual novels, but this is still better just watching someone else play that game and watch that show. Just even in regards to the presentation, which is ridiculous. Because there should be more animation in an actual anime than in that fucking visual novel, but at times it's not. And it looks worse.
I remember starting to watch the first series and then dropping it. And one of the things that really put me off was the music. You've got this amazing soundtrack from the games, and you don't tap into that. Why? Apparently they did later on, but at first it was
rarely.
It was like, come on, guys, come on. Like, look at Persona 4. It was like, oh, we're just going to keep pulling all these amazing tracks from the game, and it's like, yes, correct. That is how you do. And you get this, and it's like,
Yeah. Definitely not a labor of love. Definitely not made by people who love the games or so. It didn't feel like that anyway.
Yeah,
so
it's a cash grab.
Yeah, definitely cash grab. With not much catch behind it. Just, if you take a look at the looks of the show. And the last one on my chop and drop list is Double Decker, Doug and Kirill, which was like this buddy cop comedy from the people who made Tiger and Bunny, a show I liked a lot. But this one felt much more safe in terms of story and character setups, and the designs weren't as cool, the world wasn't as cool, and it had some truly shitty CG. So despite it having a lot of potential, I wasn't willing to stick it out long enough to see if that potential would be fulfilled. And I've heard mixed things about how that show develops over time. So, I think I made the right choice here, which is a shame. Like I said, I really like Tiger and Bunny, but they can always deliver a winner, I guess.
I mean, I sort of looked at it and I was like, I don't know.
I liked some of the stuff in its first 2 or 3 episodes. I don't remember how many I watched exactly, but there was too much in there that made me stay away for the rest of its runtime. So, yeah. That's how it is. That's the shows that didn't make the cut. So, yeah. Now let's go over to the last show for this season that did make the cut and that I think both of us enjoyed. And we'll do just that in a moment. If you were a kid growing up in the 90s, chances are you have watched maybe at least 1 or 2 episodes of an Americanized version of a Japanese tokusatsu show. And we have talked about tokusatsu before in our review of Garo, but as a refresher, tokusatsu are live-action superhero-themed special effect-heavy shows. Like we mentioned, there's Garo, for example, which is a bit of a newer entry, but most audiences are probably familiar with the Super Sentai subsection of that particular genre, which got turned into Power Rangers in the West. And what Power Rangers basically did was take the Japanese show, in case of the first season, that would be Super Sentai Zero Ranger, and keep the costumes and action scenes, but change all the actors into American ones, and also completely retool the story to make it more digestible for a Western kids audience. And soon, a couple of shows tried to do the same thing. There was Masked Rider, which was the Americanized version of a season of Kamen Rider. There was Beetleborgs, VR Troopers, all of them trying to capitalize on the big success of Power Rangers, never really succeeding. I think most of those only got 1 season, if at all a full season. I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, I watched very little of all that stuff. Like, I watched a little bit of Power Rangers, and I remember wondering what the hell the actual deal was with VR Troopers. Turns out it was just a mishmash of like 4 other things.
Yeah, three or four. I think there was Kikaida in there, and Metaldar, and one other show. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew the name Beetleborgs, but I definitely never watched that. But yeah, I would even on the weird Western adaptation front, I was still outside of the Toku fan scene.
Yeah, I watched a lot of Power Rangers as a kid. Not all the seasons all the way through, but always dropping off, then coming back later. I watched Power Rangers, the first 3 seasons or something, then in space. And maybe some of the others, Lost Galaxy, Time Force, something, and some of the later ones, Dino Thunder or what they were when they switched over to Disney from Saban to Disney or something. But yeah, I watched a lot of Power Rangers, and back in the 90s, personally, my jam was always Win Spectre. But a few name changes aside, we pretty much got the Japanese version of that over here, so it doesn't really count because yeah, that was basically the original. But yeah, among these tokusatsu adaptations was also a little show called Superhuman Samurai Syber-Squad, which took the 1993 Japanese TV series Gridman the Hyper Agent and tried to transform it into something somewhat closer to its source material than some of the other US versions of the tokusatsu shows did. But it was still pretty much its own thing. Gridman itself is part of the Giant Hero or Ultra series. Its most prominent franchise probably being Ultraman, which is getting a new CG anime adaptation on Netflix as we speak. And the basic setup of both the US and Japanese version was pretty much the same. A bunch of teenagers in high school helping a digital hero battling a bunch of kaiju, giant monsters in cyberspace. And the bad guy being a closeted nerd manipulated by an evil program called Khan Digifer in the Japanese version and Kilo Khan in the US version, played by Tim Curry, actually.
Wow, was he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there you go. Tim Curry actually big in voice acting after, while his career progressed to a certain point. He was also supposed to play the Joker in Batman the Animated Series, but then they went with Mark Hamill, which I think was a good choice. But yeah, the closeted nerd who is the villain in that show can create kaiju by drawing them and scanning them into his computer and sending them into the net, so to speak. And one of the key differences being that in Cyber-Squad, the battles were only fought in cyberspace, while in Gridman, they were seeping into the real world, if I'm not mistaken. So a bit of a bigger stake in the original version, since actual lives were at stake, while in Cyber-Squad, it was mostly cafeteria food going bad or test scores being manipulated or something. I mean, that bad guy in the American version had very low ambitions. I think the bad guy in the Japanese version actually tried to kill people or something. But I might be mistaken. But yeah, a lot of the tokusatsu shows were severely toned down for the US market. But still, Cyber-Squad was much more faithful than most of the other stuff. I think it even had the main character die in its final confrontation, at least for a while anyway. Got I don't know, zapped by electricity or something, by Kilokan. I think I saw a scene from that. So that's kind of rare, even though it didn't stick. So yeah, Cyber-Squad much more closer to its source material than Power Rangers or any of the other tokusatsu adaptations. But yeah, I actually watched several episodes of Cyber-Squad as a kid. It ran normally on TV over here, and I liked it quite a bit. Just like with Power Rangers and Masked Rider, I was always drawn to the ridiculous martial arts and special effects and crazy costumes. And like I mentioned before, I later got big into Kamen Rider and also Garo and some other toku stuff as well. But Cyber-Squad was definitely one of the shows, besides Winspector and Power Rangers, that laid the groundwork for that. So when I heard that we'd get an anime adaptation / reboot / remake of the original series, produced by none other than Studio Trigger, the people behind Kill la Kill and Little Witch Academia, among other things, I was understandably hyped up. And yeah, the director of this show is Akira Amemiya, who was the series director on Inferno Cop and Ninja Slayer, two shows that are not necessarily known for their well-directed, visually lush action scenes.
Call them stylized.
Yes. They mainly focus on comedy with very limited animation, which I think put some people off when they checked out the show, me included. I was expecting Ninja Slayer to be like this action-packed ninja show, and it was like, nope, this is not what this is. It was like, what the fuck is this? I mean, you should go back to it, because some of the comedic stylings also are comparable to what happened in Space Patrol Luluco. Hell, Inferno Cop shows up in fucking Luluco.
That's right, he does, I forgot.
Yeah, so, with the right attitude, I might actually enjoy those shows. But Amemiya was also one of the episode and animation directors on Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill, respectively, so that's more like it. He also wrote some episode scripts for Space Patrol Luluco and directed a Gridman short in 2015, so yeah, that makes sense that he was the director for this then. Speaking of script, the script for this show was entirely written by Keiichi Hasegawa, who was a writer on a bunch of shows. Big O, the 2003 version of Astro Boy, Phoenix, fucking Rockman X, of all things, and two incarnations of Zoids, namely Zoids and Zoids Zero. If I remember correctly, you were kind of a Zoids fan at some point, right, John?
Oh yeah, Zoid. Oh man, Zoids is great. It's a dumb vehicle to sell models and toys. I mean, what anime isn't now? Yeah. But it's just the designs of the robots and the confrontations between them are really cool. And I remember in some of the earlier shows, the CG on the mechs was actually, for its time, pretty good. So it managed to mix together the CG with the traditional animation surprisingly well, even for its time.
If I remember correctly, it at least was this type of fluid CG, which didn't not gel as good with some of the traditional animation, but I still preferred that to the stuttery low FPS CG we mostly get today, which also doesn't work, but has the added detriment of looking like it's running at the wrong speed. It seemed like this so it's a bit stiff at some point at points too, but at least the CG was fluid. I think it had the same type of CG that Transformers Super Link had, that Japanese Transformers show that reminded me of that a bit.
Yeah, that I'm not familiar with. Yeah. So.
A bit clunky at times maybe, but like you said, the models were cool. I think they were mostly animal themed.
Yes. Animal, dinosaur themed. I mean, one of the big things in the second series, Zoid Zero, was that everything was like this big competition. It was like, big battle arena. Gotta fight each other. And you would deploy from your team's carrier. The main character, Bit, and his crew would deploy from a hover cargo, which was like a giant snail-looking thing. And then one of the other teams had a massive Whale King, I think it was called. And it was just like this giant airborne whale. Okay, sure. But then you had stuff that was more reminiscent of like foxes and tigers, or ligers, if you want to be precise.
That's the main Zoid, right?
Yeah, the liger is usually like the big flagship Zoid in all of the series. And then, there was, you name it, there was probably a Zoid of it.
Cool. And was the story very bare bones, like you said, toy vehicle thingy, where it's good versus evil, or were there some interesting bits here and there?
Kind of went back and forth, because in the first, like the original Zoids series, I think it was called Chaotic Century, there was this actual threat of this like super powered Zoid called the Geno Breaker and Geno Soarer, and we can't let this weapon fall into the wrong hands, and there were actual stakes. In Zoid Zero, it was, we're fighting because it's fun to do.
Okay.
And then after that was Zoid's Fusors, which we don't fucking talk about.
Okay.
And then there were a couple other there were a couple other shows after that as well. That there was Zoid's Genesis, which I watched a little bit of, and it kind of harkened back to the original series. And then I think there's one after that called Zoid's Wild that I wanted to check out, but shock and awe, it never got licensed anywhere because the show is what it is. So I just kind of put it out of my mind after that. And I don't know what the critical reception was of the show.
But it sounds like at least the first 2 seasons, which Hasegawa wrote for, were good ones.
Yeah, the first series was good. The second one was fun.
All right. But yeah, I'm asking because, the story of this show of SSSS.Gridman is really great in my opinion. And we'll get to it momentarily, but first let's go back to the direction animation. To say this show is gorgeous would be a severe understatement. We have beautifully composed scenery shots, great backdrops, we have great character designs, including the thighs and feet that apparently shook thirsty anime fans to their cores, testified by the ginormous outpour of fan art of the 2 female main characters of the show while the series was running.
Listen, a whole bunch of people found religion in Rika's thighs. Mm-hmm. And, that's fine.
Yeah, sure. There was things to find religion in, actually. Many. So there you go. Thighs are fine. Great character most, great thighs, all right. And also, great CG. If you consider who is saying this, it should already elevate that statement to a higher level, because by now you should all be aware how much I usually abhor bad, low FPS anime CG. And don't get me wrong, this again is low frame count anime CG, but by God, if the camera work and fight choreography don't make more than up for it. Every action scene in this show is an exhilarating attack on the senses, and the final confrontation is a sight to behold and worth several rewatches in my opinion. I think that looked fantastic. It's like the moves Gridman pulls out and the way the camera dynamically pans around and switches and goes into perspectives that you usually don't see in anime that much because it's probably too busy, too I don't know, expensive or too difficult to animate. There's a lot of great camera work in the show, and the CG does its part to make that possible, I think. And I think the fight scenes are really, really good. Add to that a great score, including a fantastic musical callback in the final moments of the show.
Yes.
And you got a banger here.
I knew next to nothing about Gridman going into this show, but that moment in the last episode, I was like, this is the hypest shit.
Yeah, definitely. Great exclamation point on what the show was trying to do, and it definitely made it clear who it was trying to appeal to. But yeah, even the quieter moments of the show are fantastic. Both the animation and the sound design do an amazing job at establishing a dense, sometimes moody, sometimes melancholic, sometimes threatening atmosphere. I especially like the subdued background sounds like quiet piano music or chatter in the school's hallways. I also dug how some of the voice performances were directed, especially the conversations between most of the girls sounded very casual and realistic, something that you usually don't get in anime because it's often very dramatic, very over the top, but a lot of the voice work in this show sounded, at least when Rika was talking with her friends or something like that, it sounded very grounded, very real in a way. I mean, we both don't really speak Japanese, but it's like, yeah, this sounds more like a normal conversation than what you usually have in anime that is heavily scripted. It felt more real. I don't know. How did you feel about that? Did you pick that up as well, or?
I mean, a little bit, for, about as realistic as you can portray a conversation in, really any piece of media, not just anime. I will say one thing that I thought was neat, that we had a callback to Gridman's original voice actor as well in this show.
Oh, there were so many callbacks.
Yeah, because apparently in the original Gridman, he was also voiced by Hikaru Midorikawa. So of course he would come back to voice him now because he loves this sort of shit. He's made it known that he loves his goofy, campy stuff. Like I think he's gone on record as saying that he'll basically voice Hiro Yui from Gundam Wing forever.
Yeah, and he wasn't the only one who loved this shit. The people who made this definitely were big fans, and we'll get to that a bit later too. So yeah, in terms of production values, this show is a feast. There are some rough, kind of shoddy character drawings here and there for cast members who are not in focus in any given frame, but I feel that stuff was very negligible. How did you feel about it, John? Did it like jump out at you? I think that I get like really just a couple of scenes where it was like, this is not up to par. If I look, at the side characters here and there and don't focus on the main characters who are talking right now. But aside from those, and they didn't really pull me out of the show. So
maybe there is a little bit of that. I'm struggling to really pull out of my head something like that, because if indeed that was something that happened that I missed, there was a reason that I missed it, because they were pulling the focus off to something else, so that way don't look over here, it's fine, don't worry about it.
Yeah, and they did a good job at that mostly. So yeah, let's get to the story. The basic setup is pretty much the same as in the original show, albeit with some rather big twists. The main character, is a teenager called Yuta Hibiki, who awakens with amnesia. He soon is confronted by the titular cyber agent Gridman, who appears before him on the screen of an old computer at his friend Rika's house. Gridman tells Yuta to remember his calling. And even though Yuta doesn't immediately realize what that means, he is soon literally called into battle when a giant monster, or kaiju, that only he can see attacks his school. And then he fuses with Gridman and disposes of the kaiju and joins forces with Rika, his other friend Sho, and a bunch of quirky characters who soon appear on the scene to form the Gridman Alliance and battle the increasing number of kaiju terrorizing the city. But naturally, there's more to those weird occurrences than any of our heroes initially suspect, and the danger is already much closer to them than they could have ever imagined. Now, to adequately talk about the story any further, we have to spoil some plot revelations from the first 2 or 3 episodes. So if you don't want to know anything more about the story, you should maybe skip to Best of the Season now. On the other hand, if you have seen either Gridman or Cyber-Squad or paid attention when I described the story setup for those shows in the beginning of this review, those are not really spoilers anymore. Because just like those other shows, the big bad of the series is a classmate of Yuta and his friends. And in this case, it's their classmate/friend Akane Shinjo, who on the outside seems to be a very nice, friendly, calm and collected young woman. But boy, does she hide a mean streak under that pleasant exterior.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, damn. There are some chilling scenes in this show in regards to her. Of course, there's more to her character than her initial fits of childish revenge, tantrums, and stone-cold murder plots want to make us believe. And this is actually where SSSS.Gridman shines the most, besides in its fantastic production values. Because Akane is an incredibly well-realized villain. Probably one of the best I've ever seen in anime. Especially considering that this show only has 12 episodes and has to juggle a lot of different characters at the same time. But for all intents and purposes, she is the actual main protagonist of this show, while also being the main antagonist for like 95% of the series, pretty much. Of course, you can guess that someone else is pulling the strings right from the get-go, especially if you have seen the old shows, but still, the slow reveal of who she is, how she came to be the person that she is, and why she does what she does is probably the most compelling aspect of the show. Her arc is the most satisfying one in the series, especially when it comes to how the show wraps up. And I was very content with her development all the way through the show. And the entirety of her story and its emotional beats, small and big. How did you feel about it, John?
I think calling it an emotional roller coaster might be doing a disservice to it, because it starts off very unassuming, but then when her
something is up.
Yeah. But then when things really sort of come to a head, it's woof. It gets real quick, and oh my God, what really blew me away was something that they foreshadowed from the very beginning in the intro sequence. And you're watching the show, you don't know what it is. Like, what is that? Okay, whatever. You get closer to the end, and you're like, that's what that was?
Yeah, there are some twists in this show that will, like, I don't know, turn your head. That most definitely, several of those.
There's also another like subtle change that is spoilers if I just point out exactly what it is in the intro sequence. That was like that when they showed it, I was like, that's a good touch.
Yeah, definitely. I like it. I generally like it when shows do that. When it's like, did you pay attention? Yeah, it's great, and again shows how much love was poured into this show and how much care was taken when it comes to the details of everything. And it's really well paced. I think at the beginning you have like, of course, character establishment, whatever, world building. And it's mostly about establishing a certain mood and atmosphere in the beginning where it's like, okay, this feels kind of this relaxed late summer atmosphere. But you, like I said, you already feel something is up. Of course, from the get-go, you have Yuta, you had to have his amnesia, something is not some things are not as they seem, and then you get the kaiju, and pretty quickly it's revealed that Akane is behind a lot of things, and then, you wonder, how does all of this fit together? What is actually happening here? And the more pieces of the puzzle get revealed, you're like, oh, holy shit. And then again, oh, holy shit. And it builds up and becomes like this giant vortex, this cacophony of crazy plot twists and amazing action beats and emotional story beats and character development. And and by the end, you're, I wouldn't say necessarily emotionally exhausted, but it takes you, like you said, it takes you for a roller coaster ride. It's there's a lot in this show, a lot to enjoy, and a lot to latch onto. I'd say the only downside to devoting a lot of the runtime to Akane to make her such a well-realized character is that some of the other characters get a bit of the short stick, especially when directly compared to her. Like, Yuta's character never really goes beyond a pretty standard hero archetype. And Sho is so thick-headed and Rika so blasé a lot of times that they got a bit on my nerves, at least in the beginning. However, they serve as important pieces of the puzzle and as important faults for Akane's development, so they stay a pretty integral part of the story throughout. Rika's relationship to Akane becomes especially important in the final act of the show, so it's not like you could take them out of the story and not lose two very important parts of the whole picture. But I guess they sometimes acted too much like dumb teenagers, which I know they are supposed to be, but still, like, to keep me fully engaged with them all the way through, they were sometimes a bit too much, I don't know, direction where I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, don't act like fucking idiots all the time. You don't need to.
Oh, come on, man.
Yeah, still, I didn't hate them, but it was like sometimes if you weren't so caught in your own head and up your own ass, then some of this shit wouldn't happen and develop the way it does. But still, I guess I can tolerate it because they're supposed to be teenagers, and that's what happens. And yeah, the Neon Genesis Junior High students, who are these weird assistants to Gridman, who appear on the stage out of nowhere and help fighting the kaiju by transforming into additional battle gear for Gridman, also don't really get any development whatsoever. But yeah, they're mostly there for comedic relief, or being the muscle. But their quirky personalities are so much fun that it's nice to have them around. Even the show doesn't really do with them anything with them, or it doesn't really develop them. But it's fun to have them there. There's some funny bits with them here and there. I think one of my most favorite things ever was like when they all try to join a battle at full size, and the computer just doesn't have enough processing power to fucking render Gridman and all of its fucking pieces. That was amazing. It's like, holy shit, that's I don't know. That's funny, smart humor, I guess. At least when it comes to how that universe is structured. It was
just too many polygons.
Yeah, too many fucking polygons, and they all get stuck. And the computer basically freezes, like not blue screens, but yeah, it freezes.
Yeah, and the moment that leads you, it's not working. Did you turn it off and turn it back on? What?
Yeah, great stuff. A lot of IT in jokes there. But yeah, I love this show. I think in general, if you like well-animated action shows with some dark undertones, like maybe Neon Genesis Evangelion or Gurren Lagann, you will definitely like this show a lot. It's got so much to offer. Like I said, some of the characters fall maybe a bit short when compared to Akane, but there's so many cool characters in there just from the basic setup alone that it's worth seeing where they're going in the story. And the story itself is really cool. There are, like I said, a lot of twists, a lot of interesting plot developments, and this show keeps you on your toes, keeps you wondering what's going to happen, what's going on here. You can always, make suspicions, and some of them I immediately got, some I wasn't sure about, and actually turned into something different than I expected. But yeah, I think this is a great show. I think the ending is really good, especially when compared to some other aspects of the show. And I think it was just a really, really nice, kind of bittersweet, but still great ending to this show and to this story. And I think they put some actual thought into how they wanted to end this, and it felt like, yeah, this is satisfying. This is a good ending, and I like when anime actually do that and can pull that off. That doesn't always happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the toughest thing to do, I feel like, is to nail the ending. Because otherwise, if you don't do that, then the rest of the show is like, all right, why did you bother?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think there is lots of to enjoy the show, even if you're on the outside, kind of like I and John were. However, you will get so much more out of the series if you are heavily invested into mecha shows, the Ultra series, or tokusatsu shows in general, because SSSS.Gridman is filled to the brim with references to a plethora of other series, manga and franchises. Ultraman, Neon Genesis Evangelion, Transformers, Kamen Rider, Gridman, of course. So many nods and callbacks to the old shows and to other shows are jammed into that thing that someone who knows his or her way around that stuff will have a field day picking out all the little things the creators lovingly put in there. Things like Akane's Decepticon bag and the extensive talk about kaiju from a bunch of the Ultra series are only the tip of the iceberg here.
I mean, there's even a subtle reference to one of Trigger's other shows in there with Rika's mother, which is great.
Yeah, there's a bunch for Trigger fans, for Mecha fans. There's so much in there that you can pick up that you probably won't get from a first watch. And to go back and check, there's so much stuff in the background. There's so much name drops and so much visual cues and references to other stuff in there that it's totally obvious that someone who was really a fan of all of this shit made this show and was willing to put the extra legwork in here and go the extra mile to make this a fucking fan-serve fan fest. So like I said, I think the show can be enjoyed by pretty much anyone who likes that stuff, but if you were a hardcore fan, you will probably eat this thing up and would want to rewatch it over and over again. At least I imagine that to be the case. There's a great Twitter thread by Mike Dent, which I will link in the episode description. He painstakingly details all the different references to other material for every episode of the series. It's definitely worth a read, especially if you haven't really had any experience with the Ultra series or other tokusatsu stuff before, but like this show, have smelled blood in the water and want to get more into it. I found it to be very interesting, and it definitely gave some more context to some of the developments and character dynamics in the show that were not super clear to me from just an outsider's perspective. There is one specific character in this show which only in the very end is kind of explained, but not really who they are. But if you know your way around the old series and the franchise in general, it immediately makes much more sense why that character is in there, what they are doing here, why they're doing what they're doing, and all the stuff like that. So it's definitely worth checking that out, because I wasn't aware of that, and that was one of the pieces I was missing. I was like, I don't quite get what's up with that character, and that thread definitely helped me fill in those blanks. So yeah, I definitely recommend you check that out as well. It's a good read. I think he plans to compile all that stuff on his website eventually. I don't know if he has done that yet, but right now you can check out that Twitter thread.
I agree with your sentiment that, anyone can really enjoy this show, but it might seem a little daunting or impenetrable for those who are like really, really on the outside. Like me, I kind of like dipped my toes into a little bit of toku stuff when I was young. So I had like a cursory familiarity, but it's not something I like go to the way you do. But for someone who has like no idea, it might be a little more difficult to grasp what they were trying to go for with this. I don't know, but that's just what I feel.
Yeah, I think the main message of the show is a pretty simple one. Like, it's you are not alone. I mean, the way Akane as a character is structured and the way her story is told, there are some pretty obvious things said here that relate to real life things like depression, anxiety, and some psychological trauma and other stuff. You can deduce a lot of the stuff that is being said here, be it through metaphor or analogies or whatever. It's all about a certain character's journey and behaving a certain way, and then realizing what they were doing, who they really are, and all that self-realization. All of that is in here, and the final message that also that character has to realize, and that is supposed to be a message to the people watching who might have experienced some similar feelings in their life, is you are not alone. There are other people in this world that probably care for you if you let them, and that can help you get through bad times in your life. And yeah, that's a great sentiment. That's a very uplifting, positive message. And I think the show puts a nice exclamation point on that at its very end. And I really, really appreciated that. There's not much to add to that. It's just a nice, cozy message. I mean, the road to get there can be very harsh in this show, but at the end, I think you will come out of that kind of happy and motivated and optimistic, because I think that's the tone the show is going for, and I think it's doing a pretty good job at doing that. And yeah, I really, really like that show. I think there was, besides like the few nitpicks that I pointed out, there is really nothing wrong with it. It's short, it's well paced, there's lots of action, it looks great. great character work, a fantastic villain, great animation, engaging fights, cool music, fantastic OP too, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, basically only those few nitpicks and character-wise, and that's it. And yeah, I think it's on Funimation, if I'm not mistaken.
As well as Crunchyroll.
Okay, right. If you have Crunchyroll or Funimation, definitely go and check it out there. I highly recommend it. I think, John, you feel the same.
Yes, go watch this very, very good show now.
Yes, even if you are not into tokusatsu at all, I think this is a show that works on many different levels and is very enjoyable and has a lot of important little things to say about big emotions and about certain difficult times in a person's life. And yeah, I think if you have been at some point in your life or are still in maybe a similar situation, you might actually get some, I don't know, some spirit, some spiritual uplifting message out of this one that, I don't know, might help you through some dark times. I hope so. I think the show can actually do that for people. It's at least trying to, and I think that's commendable, and I think it's doing a good job at that. And yeah, can't ask much more of a show than what Gridman did. And yeah, good stuff. So check it out. And yeah, with that, we have wrapped up all our reviews from fall season 2018. Yay! But we're not quite done yet. As usual, there's still one thing we have to do. Best of the season! Alright, best of the season time. John, it's now or never. Tell us, what is your pick for best of the season?
Well,
You're probably facing the same dilemma as I do, I think.
Gridman was great,
Mm-hmm.
and we just got through talking about how great it was. I feel like, though, the fall season was really densely packed with a lot of good shows, because for all its faults, I still really enjoyed Zombieland Saga. Release the Spice was a lot of fun. Boarding School Juliet was silly, and I really liked its cast. And Bloom Into You was really well written and realized. But apart from all of those, I think I gotta give it once again to Golden Kamuy. It's the show. It's the show that shouldn't work. It shouldn't work, but it does, and it's great. And I just give me more of it, man. Just inject it straight into my fucking veins. It's goofy. There's the moments where it doesn't take itself seriously are great, but it also has just this crazy story to tell with a bunch of great characters that it's just so easy to get invested in their stories and their struggles. And I don't know, something about that just shines out a little bit more from the rest of fall season this time around. But that's just my pick. What's your pick?
Well, I was facing the same problem. I was like, it's either gonna be Golden Kamuy Season 2 or Gridman. Still thinking about it, actually. I think, since you already gave it to Golden Kamuy Season 2 and Golden Kamuy Season 1...
I don't know if that's fair, but that's my pick.
Yeah. I don't know if it's fair to pick Gridman because of that reason either, but I think that's what I'm going to do because it's anime only and we'll probably not get a second season. I doubt it anyway. It feels like it's a pretty standalone thing. While Golden Kamuy still has a chance to claim the throne in the coming season again. Not only from you, but also from me. Yeah. So I think I'm content with giving my pick for best of the season to Gridman this time. Even though I also enjoyed the character roster in Golden Kamuy more than in one in Gridman, Akane aside, of course. And Golden Kamuy, like I said, gets bonus points for being this crazy clusterfuck that shouldn't work. but does anyway.
Let me ask you something. Which OP did you like better for Golden Kamuy, the first season or the second season?
Ah, fuck.
Because, I mean...
Another Sophie's choice.
I know, right? Because there's just something about the first season opening with that stupid rotoscoped snow effect that I just love. I know it looks bad, but there's just something about it that's great. And I love that, it's one of Man with a Mission's more downbeat songs. It's very, somber. This is, Our Winding Road. And then you come into the second OP and it starts with that like blooming flower and it immediately gets you with the song. And it's like, yeah, let's go. Let's go on a fucking adventure. And it's great. And I can't pick between the two. So I'm making you pick.
It's really hard. I don't think I can either. I mean, I think I'm biased because I like Man with a Mission a lot. So just song-wise, probably the first one, but I'm not sure. I really like the second one as well. It's really hard. It's like you said, in the beginning, it's this more maybe a bit nostalgic, maybe a bit melancholic tone, and then it gets, as the show gets crazier and crazier, the new opening starts to fit that more. And it's like, yeah, we're going on crazy adventure, guys. Here's your new tone experience. And it's doing a banger job at that. And I really like the second opening too. I can't choose either. I think they're both pretty much perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, and
I just want to throw that question at you because I forgot to when we talked about the show initially, basically.
And the OP2 Gridman was also one of my favorites from last season.
Yeah.
So it's really great. I have listened to it many times, and when it hits like in the show, it also works really well.
Man. It was also great about the single that a song was on. Was the band OXT also did a cover of the original Gridman theme, which is really cool.
Nice. So yeah, man, it could go to either of those two shows for me, but if I have to pick one, I'm going to pick Gridman because, like I said, it's probably not going to get the second season. It's one thing I really like the characterization, the plot, the story of Akane. I really liked how that all came together in the end. I liked the plot twist on the way there, everything, the story. Some of the characters I could take or leave. Right, they weren't maybe doing that much for me, but as a whole, that series was really, really great, and I enjoyed it from beginning to end. And on the other side, you have Golden Kamuy, and the character roster is just fucking amazing. It's one of the best things I've ever seen, and craziest things I've ever seen besides JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, in terms of character roster, in terms of story, in terms of fucking out of nowhere, emotionally gripping scenes. And then whiplash with great jokes, and then some super violent action scenes that, despite they're not being well animated, hit home really hard and are thrilling from beginning to end. And yeah, it's two fantastic shows who are on equal footing, which some people wouldn't believe if they saw a trailer for Golden Kamuy and looked at the animation and were like, are you serious? This looks just dumb and stupid. What the fuck? And Gridman, you're right, looks much better. And no, these show are equals. They're just coming from very different angles. They're two very different shows, but they're equally great. So yeah, maybe tomorrow I'd pick Golden Kamuy. I don't know. It's just a day-by-day thing. But yeah, you can't go wrong with watching either of these shows. If you have to pick like two shows from this season that you want to watch, pick those two.
Definitely.
And you're not going to regret it. We promise you that here on Anime Brain Freeze. And with that said, it's time to say goodbye for this season. But as you might be aware, the premieres for spring season have already started. The rest is starting tomorrow, this weekend. So we'll, of course, be back in 2 weeks and start talking about those sexy premieres. And then start with our first review from winter season 2019. And I hope you all will be looking forward to that. And we'll see you then.
See us.
And that is a wrap on the 71st episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vrt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and some interesting articles linked in our episode release posts. Follow us on Twitter at AnyBrainFreeze. We tweet regular updates and fun anime-related stuff there. Leave us comments and questions on Facebook and our YouTube channel, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Macht's gut.
Take care, everybody. Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
Are you frustrated?
Are you a mob?
Your life is your own.
So go beyond 99.9%.
And wake your psyche up!